Hello, welcome back to another episode of Black Men, a Conversation. This is the Veterans Edition. Today we're going to talk about and take a look at Black patriotism, what it means to Black people in general, Black veterans, and also what it looks like from a historical context.
What drives an insecure dude? Foreign cars are driving a mini coupe. Mini coupe. Pretty ladies all over the city. Let me adjust the body. No, let me adjust the body. We selling out. Sex drives for the dudes' hormones. Hey, love don't mean the same no more. What used to be a miracle, now it's something unbearable. Coming from the umbilical, life giving a cynical. And I don't wanna die right now. I just wanna live my life. Live my life. And all I see is hell right now. Soon I will see them.
I am Baxter E. Hall. I am going to introduce my two hosts or guests here shortly, but we try to tackle these conversations to give you a peek into some of the conversations that we're having and hope that we're adding and giving you perspective so that when you take these to your dining room tables or Zoom meetings that we provided some value. So please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Dion Carson. D, if you would just talk about your experience in the military, and then we'll go to Jeff Jones after that, and then we'll jump into the topics.
All right. Deion Carson, born and raised Detroit, Michigan. Joined the Army active duty 2003, February. Um, Left home as a buck private, as they call it, no rank. Um, Ended up going to 3rd Infantry Division. That was my first unit. Deployed twice to Iraq with them. And ended up deploying to Afghanistan with the 3rd Special Forces Unit, 3rd Special Forces Group. I'm sorry. Now I worked my way up from E1 to Staff Sergeant, from the lowest peon on the totem pole up to the platoon sergeant level. And my family has a history of service. I got My grandfather was a Montford Point Marine, which is a set of the first set of Marines to be able to join the Marine Corps, and we could trace all the way back to the Buffalo Soldier era, and we continue to serve to this day. Our Black patriotism has been a part of this country since the beginning. We've been a part of this fabric.
Well, thank you for your service, man, and yeah, Patriot for sure. Uh, Jeff Jeff Jones.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Jones. I joined the United States Navy February the 17th, 1997. I joined as a fire controlman, missile tech. Stayed in, did 3 6-month cruises, deployments, a little bit different than the Army. But so we did my first cruise, maybe 8 hours into the cruise. Well, I landed on the boat. They flew me in on a helicopter, and we shot missiles into Croatia. I was deployed on September 11th. Extended for about 8 months. Yeah, it was what it was. I mean, I wasn't in the sand or anything, but I mean, we were still doing our part, tip of the spear. I got out July 2004. My father was in the Navy. He did 30 years in the Navy. He retired Command Master Chief, E9. I got out as a E5, second class. My brother-in-law, my sister's husband, he got in undesignated, came in as an E1, got out as an O5. Yeah, it's there's a lot of military tradition in my family also. And yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything. Just how far I go back in the military, Um, I didn't know anything about paying for a gym membership until I was 26 years old. Just as a, as a point, never knew nothing about paying for a gym membership, or I didn't know anything about like medical insurance. So I grew up just fine. There are a lot of us around. We just don't talk about it and wave flags in everybody's faces.
Well, again, man, thank you for your service. Um, you know, we'll get into this, but we have to make sure that when we talk about patriotism, that we don't discount the Black Americans' contribution from the very start of this country. We'll get into that, but um, I I am not a veteran. I'm honored to be a part of this conversation, and thank you both again. And let's get this thing going. So I want to start by sort of giving you a couple of different definitions of patriotism. So patriotism or national pride is the feeling of love, devotion, and sense of attachment to a homeland and alliance with other citizens who share the same sentiment. A devotion and vigorous support for one's country. Um, what does patriotism mean to you both, and does Black patriotism mean something different than patriotism in your opinion?
You can have that one first, Dion.
All right, to me, patriotism means a love of your country, a service to your country, and also wanting to see your country reach its full potential and the benefit of every citizen in it, not to the exclusion of anyone. So if I love America, but I only love America for my kind, I'm not a patriot. If I don't want to see everybody experience the full flourishment and the full potential of what we can do with our country, I'm not a patriot. I'm something else. You might be a nationalist in a specific way, but patriotism is love of country. Well, to love your country, you gotta love everybody in it, and you gotta want to see the fulfill. Because you're not, when you love the water, the grass, the land, those things exist all over the world. The country is the people and everybody in it. And Black patriotism is different because we had to exhibit those characteristics despite being told we didn't have a soul, despite being told we were three-fifths of a man, despite being told no, you can't vote, despite being told no, you're not worthy of equal opportunity. We had to serve, and we served valiantly and proudly despite those things. So yes, Black patriotism is a bit different.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm at a loss for words with Dion's explanation because he summed it up. I mean, I think anything else I say to add on to it would take away from what he said. I'd I'd like that to be it.
when you talk about sort of what's going on now, there's the protest, and we can take it a few years back when it relates to Colin Kaepernick and the whole kneeling and disrespecting the flag, and people, well, if you don't like this country, then you can go, go somewhere else, right? Um, talk about that that false narrative that continues to be put out there, how you can oppose, talk about like how why America was, you know, formed, and the oppression that America was, fighting against. And now there are people that are out there saying, no, 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 you can't fight this oppression. You could, now it's unpatriotic to be that way. Like, talk about kind of what's been going on. Now we know it's been going on well before Colin Kaepernick, but there's been like this new wave of nationalists per se, or these so-called patriots. Like, just kind of walk me through a little bit of that, if you guys would, and sort of your opinions on these people and their criticisms of Black people speaking up, or anybody speaking up about injustices and oppression.
Um, that's a lot to unpack. So, all right, our country was formed on people wanting to be able to talk and not be a subject of the crown. That's why it was formed. The people that initially came over here, the Quakers, the Puritans, they came over here because they wanted to practice their own religion, and they wanted to practice it. They wanted to practice it in their way, separate from the Catholic and the Protestant church. They wanted to practice their religion that way. Then you had the other group of English people that came over here. They came over here because it was a business venture, one, and two, they wanted to be able to do things their way, and they didn't want to be subjects of the crown. Then you have the inception of our nation. You had the Magna Carta first. Somewhere in between the Magna Carta and the Constitution, you had the Federalist Papers, and these were all forms of dissent, not little tiny dissent, humongous dissent. Like, you're over there as a business venture, and you decide to create another nation. You decide to turn your back on the crown. We're all good with it. We start moving along, and when they actually come up with the Constitution, they put in specific checks and balances to ensure that the average American citizen can speak his mind without any type of negative actions from the government, from the federal government. The government can't say something to me because I don't agree with the way things are going around me. As long as I don't hurt anybody, as long as I don't suggest violent behavior or the actual takedown of a government. And today what you see is, and I'm going to leave I want to speak of this as an abstract. I'm going to leave out the color. But what you have going on now is you have groups of people that are they're saying, look, stop killing us. Let's fix the wage gap. We need good medical care. Guess what? We're going to kneel down because of this. And everybody is calling them anti-patriotic. And they're infringing upon their First Amendment rights. Then you have another group that is actively calling for the government to be taken down. We have a group of nationalists that planned to kidnap a governor. When do you guys remember this happening? Never. I don't know. I'm not going to say nothing about the racial kind of the racial part of it. But all I know is that if I kneel down, I'm fired. I'm not American. It don't matter if I was in the military, I can leave. But I know that if I decide to kidnap the governor of Louisiana and I look a certain way, there's going to be a lot of people that are on my side. There's going to be a whole lot of people that are on my side. And I really believe that it's the dumbing down of America. None of us read anymore. We go into our echo chamber. We get our bias that we already have confirmed, and we all just bounce the same idea off of each other. There's no iron sharpening iron. Ain't no iron sharpening nothing. It's a whole bunch of dull knives in the drawer. And we're all bouncing this off of each other. We're not scientific anymore. Nobody reads. You two guys tell me it, and I believe it, and we just move on. And a patriot is whatever I believe it is to be. It doesn't matter what the definition says. The Constitution is whatever I believe it is. It doesn't matter what the words in it say. It's whatever we agree that it says. That's just how I feel about it.
D.
The 14th Amendment ends with I to any person within its jurisdiction the equal of the law. So to demand that you live up to the Constitution and to use one of its amendments for this demanding that you live up to the Constitution is called unpatriotic. Say that again. To demand that you live up to the Constitution and to use one of the amendments to express that demand is called unpatriotic. So the patriotic people forcibly suppress your your constitutional rights while saying that you're unpatriotic. But it makes sense in that person's mind that a peaceful protest should be met with vitriol and violence when the peaceful protest is demanding that we have equal protections under the law. We get into these numbers where people talk about, well, they don't shoot these people any more than these people. Let's get rid of that. Let's talk about negative interaction with police. Doesn't always end up you getting shot. You could get your face stumped in. You could get a magnet light broken on your head. Or you could just get raided over and over again. Or you could be falsely imprisoned. All those things come to play when we're talking about why people are protesting. There is nothing unpatriotic about it because we are requiring that you live up to the foundational documents that you say are the fabric and the blood life of this country. You can't confuse the two. Unfortunately, most people only know fragments of the Constitution. They know the words right to bear arms. They know the words freedom of speech. They don't know anything else. Nothing. The ones who claim to love it the most have no idea what's actually written and required of this country for its citizens.
Wow. Um, so we're in the present. We know that there's a lot of sound bites, and people are just regurgitating what they've heard from somebody else, right? No real investigation, no real research, no real knowledge, no real care to learn. And that's today. But let's talk about let's go back and talk about the black patriots and the black soldiers.
The Revolutionary War was fought 1775 to 1783. Everybody understands about national independence. I hope I'm not going to go into explaining that to you. But around 5,000 free and enslaved black people fought for the reason of independence in that war. During the War of 1812, black soldiers served in integrated and segregated units. They fought and they fought and they served as laborers, constructionists. They fortified the army. They brought food, materials, munitions. We had 2 battalions of free men of color and several other participating units that allowed us to secure victory during against the British during the battle over New Orleans. During that time, you received much of the United States of America, and yet still you served.
You were still what? Do you were cutting out a little bit. I don't want that point to be missed.
During
You
that time, many people were enslaved in the United States of America, fighting for someone else's freedom with a little bit of thing in the back of your mind and maybe we'll taste that. But guess what? At the end of the Revolutionary Wars and in the end of the War of 1812, you didn't taste it. They put you right back where you were in your so-called, and that still didn't stop future service. When you talk about patriotism, you cannot get more patriotic than that.
Jeff, you have anything to add?
Yeah. So that's a just think about it. You have you know that you're not a person. They told these people that they weren't people. What does it take? What would one of us do that? I have to look at that sometimes. Like, would I do that? Would I would I go out and you gotta think it ain't like it is nowadays, like where back in the days, a stomach wound was a long, drawn out death. You were gonna die. You weren't living from a stomach wound. Like if you get stabbed, you get bayoneted, you get hit by a musket round. That's a long, that's a drawn out thing, and they ain't gonna make you comfortable. You already know that. They, it's gonna be battlefield triage for us was really easy. You could get up or you couldn't, and it's just amazing. What would make you do that? And I have to Mike myself. I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would. And it just it upsets me whenever people can go by the logic and they can say, yeah, we were slaves because we wanted to be slaves. Huh? How would you go fight? Knowing where you going when you get after it, knowing how these people treat you. Are you still gonna fight for them? They did it voluntarily because there are statistics, and Dion's been to warfare. That's why the military uses certain training to train you to do things without thinking about them, because they figured out all the way back, the Greeks figured this out and the Romans figured it out, that humans naturally don't want to kill other human beings. We're not naturally violent. We don't want to do that. So what would make you want to do something? And it has to be that little tiny grain that you think, you know what, maybe if I do good enough, they'll let me go. They'll let me marry this woman that I have children with. I can have a wife. Because you can get to have a wife back then. You could have a wife as long as you had her, as long as you was there, till you got shipped off. But it's just little things. Maybe my kids can stay around me. If I make it through this, maybe they'll let my kids stay together. I mean, it's interesting, and it's a form of ultimate sacrifice, and it is the very definition of patriotism. To be loyal, and it's not being a conscript soldier. There's a big difference. That's the ultimate form of patriotism. Whenever you fight for a country, you fight for a country, you say this is my country, but they don't call you one of them.
Wow. And then somehow down the line, black people got in the stereotype of being lazy. Ain't that something?
Crazy.
So we are, participating, volunteering in these wars, for our freedom, for America's freedom. We, if you're, blessed enough to survive, you get back, and now you're back to being treated less than human. But you do it anyway with the hope of potentially getting treated equal, right? That's what your hope is man, maybe if I show enough,
Hey,
then I'll be
hey,
accepted.
hey, Bax, I don't even think it's that much. I don't even think they wanted to be accepted. Like it's
Talk
just the
about that.
little, it's the little things. Maybe they'll just let me go to work. Maybe I can just go to work and I can have me a job. And they put all us over there in the corner. We'll be free, you know. My
Yeah,
family gets to stay together. I can have a family. Imagine that. And you imagine not being able to have a family. And what we have to remember is the time Dion's talking about, a lot of the African Americans that were in slavery, they didn't start, I want to say, just prior to the Civil War, you had a lot of international things going on where a lot of the world was outlawing slavery, and you had to smuggle slaves out of Africa, and slaves from Africa were known to be difficult. So during the time from a Revolutionary War um, to the War of 1812, our roots were really strong. We still remembered all them stories, still remembered all the dances, and imagine knowing all this, and those are just dreams to you because you're second generation, third generation by then, but you still remember it. You still got somebody that can tell them stories, but you're growing up, and the biggest thing in your life is I just want to have a family.
yeah,
You know, I want to lay down next to my wife at night. I want to play with my kids, bounce my kid on my lap. I want to get off work and get up and go to work the next day.
yeah,
Because if you come down here and you go look at these sugarcane fields, you drive 55 miles an hour, it ain't nothing but a cane field. One dude used to own all that, and they ain't have no car. What time they had to get up to go to work in the morning? You know what I mean? 15 miles of cane field? Man, these people they just wanted to just be a person. They didn't even want no equality back then. Just be a person.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a great point. Just the simple things like you said, Jeff. The things that they knew that they deserved, the things that they knew they were connected to their ancestors, and they knew the life that they had prior to this crazy slave. So they were close enough to know their expectations for life were still, you know, generationally kind of within reach, right, so to speak. And so, wow, wow, yeah. Sometimes we can kind of look from today and look, and yeah, like you said, maybe not even want to be treated equal, just wanted to be a human.
I just want something that you take for granted. It gives me
Right.
the chills. Like it makes me kind of emotional when I think about it.
Yeah.
And that's why they were fighting. You can't make nobody fight.
That's right.
You can't make you. The Russians tried. You can't make them fight. All you can do is you can walk over them. That's it. I
Right.
mean, and they fought because they just wanted to be just. Man, I don't want free. Man, I don't want equal rights. I just don't want to get beat.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. So we are the war of 1812 is kind of where we left off. where do you want to go from there? And from a historical standpoint, what's next?
The big one, the Civil War.
Okay.
The Civil War, 1861 to 1865. We understand historically, it took over this many of the young white man's population in the United States of America. We understand all that, right? Um, but about 186,000 black soldiers served in the Civil War. 94,000 of them were former or enslaved people, right? We lost 38,000 men because this is the one. The Civil War. Oh, we're about to war against we're about to be good now. Because if we fight, we win this one, we should be straight, right? And one of the colonels, um, he commanded the first regiment of the South Carolina Volunteers for the Union, and his name T.W. Higgins. And he said, no officer in this regiment now doubts that the key to the successful prosecution of this war lies in the unlimited employment of black troops in madness to attempt the battle with the bravest white troops, what I have successfully accomplished with the black ones. Civil War. This is a white colonel telling you that we wouldn't have got this dub without these black folks. Matter of fact, he said it would have been crazy to attempt what they did with the bravest of the others. So if the war started in 1861, 1865 was the end of slavery. Whatever. We served. We served on the side and for the cause of freedom. This was definitely thinking, yo, okay, Civil War, if we help the North beat the South, we should be good. You know, we should be straight. And for a minute, we kind of were. We kind of were. Because you get into the Reconstruction, right? We got into office at a high rate. Uh, this shows the ingenuity and the intelligence and the wiliness of the, because we played dumb. As soon as this freedom stamp came, you can read and speak and write books. When the heck y'all learned? Yes, we can. And yes, we always have been able to. We just didn't want our eyes to get plucked out or our tongue to get cut off. But we always been able to do this. So we got into that little period to where things look like they could have been straight. And here comes Mr. Jim Crow. Here comes the black codes. Here comes the the uh the daggone convict leasing, which in many cases was worse than slavery.
I want to take it back, and I'm hoping that you guys can shed some light on this. And if it's, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I want to get. So the Civil War is over, right? You guys both know your history. Civil War is over, and they know that they can't just tell slaves, okay, y'all free, y'all going about your business, right? They knew that people need to be set up for success, right? They wanted to be able to provide land, and because land was so important to being established in this country,
Mm-hmm.
the freedmen's, right, and
Mm-hmm.
what they were trying to accomplish. Hey, okay, that's over with. now let's set these folks up for success. Things start to move a little bit, and then politically some things change. Right, Lincoln is assassinated, and now they're trying to undo everything that they were trying to put in place. They knew the importance of it, right? So it could be argued that they did not want they they the Freedmen's and the entire piece was to get people on level playing ground per se. This is in 1800s, and then the people that are in office, they said, "No, we can't do that. We can't take this land from the." Talk about, before we get to the Jim Crow piece and all, like, talk about the difficulty it must be today, the amount of land that we still don't have. Jeff mentioned earlier, one person owning 15 miles of land. Talk about the importance of land, and the what if.
So a common misconception is that, like, one of the revisionist misconceptions is that they were taking land from white men and giving it to African Americans. They weren't. There's a whole bunch of land. So you were going to get this 60 acres. You were going to get a mule. It was going to be heavily forested, and you were going to have to clear it off. But the big thing of it is the South in particular had a whole industry built on something. The entire industry of the South was built on slavery. So you have the 13th Amendment. It frees the slaves, but it also, it pretty much creates the penal system, like the industrial prison complex. And they use that to be able to keep their industry going. Because you got, like you said, you got to just imagine you're a plantation owner, you got 15,000 acres, and you ain't got nobody to work the land. So I can go get me some convicts. Well, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie these people to the land. I'm gonna be like, guess what? Guess what, Baxter? You did good for me. You're a hard worker. You're pretty sharp. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna deed you 100 acres. It's yours. Thank you, master. But I ain't got no money to pay for it. Don't worry about it. You can work it off. Here's how you can work it off. You can pay me a little bit, and you can give me some of your harvest. And once it's paid off, it's all yours. We can do business together if you want. You can go your way if you want. But if you showed any type of intelligence about you, you wasn't getting that deal. They want to do a business with you. They wanted to see how you was with your numbers, and if you could automatically see a pile of debt that you could never get out from under. Hey, if you get a little bit old, well, what if I get sick and I pass away? You know what? It's going to go to your kids. And this is how they tied people. You had people in the 40s tied to land from the Civil War. They were tied to this. And you knew that because you go places in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Arkansas, Tennessee. You got, in these rural areas, you got white and black people with the same last name. That's how they tied them. Like, you're tied to it. And the government, like the federal government didn't necessarily, they knew what was going on. They tried. Abraham Lincoln gets assassinated, and then they pull out the big guns. They pull out the big guns and they just go, guess what? Hey, if you go to vote, we're going to kill you. And you have some people that still wouldn't vote it. They tried to kill them, or they started the black codes, where they would have they'd have a jar of jelly beans when you go in to vote. They'd be like, hey man, you got to take a test to pass. You got to tell me how many jelly beans is in that jar. For real, this is what happened. You got to tell me how many jelly beans in that jar before you get the vote. And it was insidious. I mean, and this is what happened. And we go back to the veterans. You still had people that volunteered directly after that for the Indian Wars. They were still there. The Buffalo Soldiers. How many regiments? 4? Was it 4 regiments, Dion? It was 4 regiments. Like, they volunteered. And like I said before we started recording, there were 25 Medal of Honors awarded in the Civil War to African Americans, 18 in the Indian Wars, 18 of them. So we were going far and beyond still then, and they was killing us. The term carpetbagger and scallywag, those are Reconstruction terms. There were carpetbaggers and scallywags were people that, or they were called, what's the term? Rabble rousers. They were Northern Republicans, and they were Northern Republicans that came down and encouraged Black people to vote. Carpetbaggers and scallywags. That's where the term comes from. But yeah.
If you look at, we gotta hit the 40 acres and a mule. I don't know if y'all ever stood on 40 acres and looked around, but you can't see it.
Yeah.
But the National Farmers Union says that the long-term financial implications of this reversal of the 40 acres and a mule is staggering. By some estimations, the value of 40 acres and a mule for those 40,000 freed slaves will be worth $640 billion today.
Wow.
When you talk about, see, people, they hate the word. They hate the word. What the freaking heck we talking about?
You talking reparations?
Reparations. They hate the word reparation, right? But do you hate restitution? Are you sure? You sure you hate restitution?
We give it to everybody else.
Right. So let's switch it up a bit. Let's talk about restitution. That's a lot of money, man. I'll take 4 of the 40.
I'll take tax exempt status or school for my kids.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to have to wrap it in. That's how I hate to. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I don't think that we're going to get money.
No.
And I think fighting for money is the wrong thing. You have to fight for something that's transparent, like that they won't really see, because they don't want you just giving Black people $1 million or even $25,000 or $2,000. Tax-free status. If you trace it back, you get tax-free status for this many years, or your kids go to school for free, something like that. You know, I'm sorry for cutting you off, Dion.
You can find a way for restitution. It's been done.
Yeah. No, we can.
It'll be done in the future.
Just not for us.
I derailed you guys a little bit because I thought that piece is important, because it's still a piece that we deal with now, the lack of ownership, and land is so important. And there's some smart people that engineered things to continue their oppression while continuing to sort of build on the industries, the southern, more so southern industries, right? That depended on our labor. So we went from being free to having our own to, in many instances, and correct me if I'm wrong, working for the same owner that we were just free from because we didn't have anywhere else to go. All right, let's move on. D, you started to talk about a number of topics around sort of post slavery and some of the other ways that Black people were oppressed, marginalized. Um, I want to give you the floor to kind of set that back up, and we can talk through some of these topics.
Okay, after serving in every conflict to this point, and coming home to maltreatment each time, um, now they have to figure out a different way because 1865, we can't, we don't have slaves, right? We can't enslave people, literally. But what we can do is we can start terrorizing Black folks, right? So between 1882 and 1951, what we know is that around 3,500 Black people were lynched. That's just what you know of, because you get down and tuck and back in the, you don't know. The numbers are probably double or triple that. 1890 to 1908, the Southern states adopted new laws, uh, changing to disenfranchise Black voters. You know, poll taxing, counting the jelly beans, like Jeff was talking about, all these different tactics to prevent you from voting. By 1914, every Southern state and many Northern cities had Jim Crow. Let's not leave that out. There were Northern cities and states that had Jim Crow. That's, that's just a fact.
By what year?
By 1914, all of them. So everybody, if you live below the Mason-Dixon line, all of them had Jim Crow.
What's Jim? What does that mean, D?
Jim Crow was just a set of rules and standards and ways of treating Black folks to disenfranchise them, terrorize them, and make sure that they would never have equal rights. And they did it legally. And then they also were able to usurp the law because who's going to freaking um, prosecute you, right? So you had laws, and then you had back channels to enforce the disenfranchisement and the oppression of Black people. And all that fit under Jim Crow. So when you get into that era and you say, okay, man, we served in the Revolutionary War, served in the War 1812, we served in the Civil War with distinction. Um, man, we did what we were supposed to do for this country, to keep moving forward as it had been, because it started one place and it ended up where it is, right? And we have been a part of that engine. And yet and still, not only do you, it's it's not like you have a, people talk about benign neglect. Oh, well, you don't vote for these people, but there's a difference between benign neglect and active aggression. So you didn't just neglect and leave us to our own devices. You devised things to actively thwart any progress. And this is what we lived through. And we still, because the point of this, we talking about Black patriotism, we still served this country. We still helped build it. We still fought for it to live up to what the words of the Constitution say. So at the end of the day, we, Black patriotism is different because the circumstances by which you have to be patriotic are different. And any period will tell you that the country doesn't quite live up to the debt that it owes veterans overall. They'll tell you that, like, no matter what the color is, right? Now you add to that you're a Black man coming back from war, and you're coming back to Jim Crow, you're coming back to segregation, you're coming back to police brutality, and yet and still your son might serve when it's called upon in the next time.
And um, I think your son might serve because it's still better. It was still better than where you was at. And that's another thing to think about. How bad does it got to be where you live at for you to go overseas and risk getting shot? You know, like, what do you stand to gain? How bad does it have to be? My daddy, my daddy grew up in Tifton, Georgia, deep, deep south, and you didn't get mad about being called a nigger. You couldn't. That's just what they called you. And the military was 10 times better. And it wasn't primarily segregated then, but it was still, because the military was racist even back in the 60s. But it was 100% better than where he grew up. That's why. I mean, it was still better. It was, like we would still serve because we would go to war because it was better than where we lived. How sad is that, man? How sad is it? You'll fight in World War One. You'll go trench warfare. And I know you've read about it too, Dion. Trench warfare was horrible. It was horrible. Like, you live in a trench until you get ready to y'all take little pot shots at each other till somebody tells y'all to jump up in mass and run across no man's land. And hopefully you go by the rate of fire and how many people you think are over there, and you send enough people. You'd be like, if we send so many people, they don't have enough bullets. Like, and guys volunteered for that. Well, I can't remember. Did they have a draft, Dion, for the World War One? I know they did for two.
Sure, I know they did for World War II.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember for World War One. But or before then they didn't call it, what they call it, conscription. You were conscripted. They just told you had to go.
The draft started September 16th, 1940.
Okay, yeah.
So that's World War II era. But yeah, it's amazing because still, with all this servitude and all of these war heroes and all of these people who fought up to this point, the default picture when you talk about a patriot is a white man holding a flag. You're talking John Wayne. That's the default setting. That's just the automatic what you think when in your mind when you talk about a patriot. So we could transition to World War One, right? Because now the numbers start getting crazy. World War One, 1914 to 1918. So somewhere between 370,000 to 400,000 African Americans served during World War One, right? But this time they started to relegate you to like being a stevedore or a camp laborer or logistical support or cooks, all that good stuff, right? So out of that number, about 40 to 50,000 were allowed to see combat. I use the word allowed because that's the truth.
Why was that, D? Why the change?
You got to think what was going on in America at 1914, right? We just have to talk about the post Reconstruction and all this good old stuff, right? So 1914, we're still in that time period, right? We're still in that range. And then, we talked about Jim Crow and all that good old stuff, right? Reared its ugly head and becoming what it became for all those years. 1914, 1918 get you in a good time space to where now that has we'd rather we'd rather the vitriol became so big, we'd rather have less fighters than to fight alongside you niggas. But we still got it in. And then this is why you don't hear stories about the Harlem Hellfighters, right? And other units, black units that fought and served during the World War, because you get like Private William Henry Johnson, right? Where he fought off a German attack with his weapon, ran out of bullets, started fighting the mugs with the end of his weapon, then pull out the bayonet and start scrapping. He didn't know how many people out there. He just knew he couldn't lose this position. And his homeboy was injured, and he got injured, right? In the morning time, and he got wounded about 21 times in the fight. Morning time, they say, man, this dude done killed. This was a big invasion. We was gonna take an L. This is 1918. He got his Medal of Honor in 2015. He didn't get a Medal of Honor because he's dead. His descendants received a Medal of Honor.
World War One.
World War One.
Two recipients, and they were in the 90s.
So what I'm hearing, and I want you guys both to expound on this. Jim Crow is there. So there's a term, there's a term like, people want you to do well. They just don't want you doing better than them, right? So when we talk about the Revolutionary War, even the Civil War, right? Many of those the black soldiers are still sort of slaves. They, reluctantly sort of, slavery ends, but now there's these other opportunities to marginalize and oppress, terrorize us. But we can't show them that they're equal, even though they're free. So even when a world war, stop me if I'm off, even in a world war, we are relegating you guys to certain duty so that you don't get the impression that you are on equal footing with us. And we're not even going to recognize, we're going to do our best to not recognize your contributions to this war. Jeff, you talked about the number of Medal of Honor medals that were during the Revolutionary War, right?
It was actually during the Civil War.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Civil War. So there were 25?
Yep, 25.
So we go from 25 in the Civil War,
and then 18 in the Indian Wars, to
18,
6 in the Spanish-American War, to 2 in World War One. Almost 100 years later.
with more soldiers.
With more soldiers.
Thousands, hundreds of, right?
Hundreds of thousands of more. Hundreds of thousands of more.
So again, it all feels very intentional.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to put this into words, but it's like you have these people at the top, and I don't believe all of them were like that, but all it takes is one or two really influential people. And once you make the masses believe it, like today, for instance, a lot of people believe things that are absolutely not true. Scientifically, like today, a lot of people like global warming. It's not real. People believe that. And what they do is they get the masses to believe it, And so you have a way of making people believe something that's untrue, and then you make them think you're doing it to protect them. So you have the masses of the uneducated back then that just all they get drummed down from the top is that these people are inferior to you. All the white people, they're like, look, man, look, they got to have somebody look down on, you know, like you have to have somebody look down on. And I'm telling you, these guys, look, they're trying to take your jobs, i.e., what's going on, because we're saying that about somebody else right now. But they're trying to take your jobs. They're trying to put you out or whatever. Your daddy served. His daddy served. He was a hero. You're going to be a hero. Don't let them be heroes over you. And guess what? We're going to do a whole bunch to make sure that that don't happen. But some of them going to slip through the cracks. When they slip through the cracks, you need to make sure that they stay in their place. That's what goes on. We've made they made a whole group of people believe this. And because, so you guys have heard of what's it called? Eugenics.
Yeah. Margaret Sanger.
They believe that you could look at the shape of our head. African Americans had a certain shaped head that made us incapable. It pretty much made us animals because of the way our head was shaped. Seriously. Like, we weren't capable of it. Like, we're not capable, we're lazy. We're not capable of discipline. Because, you know, of our animalistic savage nature, and we're not that smart. We can only learn so much. Don't count on us to learn so much. So, i.e., you can wash clothes, and you can cook. And yeah, we'll put you in battlefield triage. You know, we'll let you get in the medical department, but you're going to change bandages. You're just going to wrap people up and take them off. We don't want you touching nobody. And amazingly, we still volunteer, and we learned to be battlefield medics. And we didn't get taught how to be battlefield medics. We learned it from standing on the side. To think about it, that's how we learned everything, Max. Everything coming up, nobody taught us anything. We learned everything sitting on the side. Just imagine going to school and you can't never ask no questions. Imagine going to high school imagine having to earn your diploma as a janitor. That's pretty much what, imagine you're a janitor at high school, you're sleeping. And that's the way you got to earn your diploma, by walking by classes and picking up a little bit. Nobody taught us. They didn't teach us anything. I mean, other than manual labor, anything intricate, we taught ourselves. Nobody taught you how to shoot. They gave you a gun and they was like, oh, man, they probably gonna go over there. And they sent you to the worst spot. Probably tactically insignificant. You can ask Dion, if you did end up in a tactically significant spot, it was because the battle plan was wrong and they got outfought by the enemy and you just happened to be there. i.e. the Hellfighter.
They gave them to the French. They gave them away. And the French were like, thank you. These are the best cats we ever served with. And they gave them all the awards. And the United States gave them nothing.
Yeah.
Talk about that, D. Talk about that. Don't just gloss over that.
So the Harlem Hellfighters, what they became known as, they served with distinction in World War I. But on the way over there, they was like, the United States was like, we don't want these niggas. We can give them to the French. They probably gonna get ate up anyway. We went over there, showed up and showed out. The Hellfighters was not that was not the nickname. They were given that nickname once they got in battle. That became the name because of the pain they put down. So at the end of the day, when we get to this World War I era and they don't want to deal with us, but no matter where we go, we shined. And we happen to be wearing United States Army uniforms at the time, the Harlem Hellfighters specifically, that we're talking about right now. So this unit of black soldiers, you give them away, throw them away. We don't want them, you take them. But we have on American uniforms. We serve with distinction, valor, courage, honor, all the above, representing this country that gave us away for the war. And the French awarded that unit the highest awards they could give them,
Wow.
and our country did not. And yet still, that did not stop us from serving. Black patriotism is different.
It, it just to add on what Dion said, you know what we'd rather do? We'd rather act like it didn't happen. We gave them to the French. They served with distinction. They got awarded the highest medals that they could ever be awarded. You know, they got the highest medals for valor in combat. And we acted like it didn't happen. We just said, all right, you know, all right. It took them to the 90s. So somebody's like, come on, man, like look at this. We just acted like it didn't happen. In this black people not being in combat roles, it went on till about Vietnam, huh, Dion? Like black people primarily being exempted from not exempted, but not really being like we were frontline soldiers, but as a routine being frontline soldiers, I don't believe it was really a big thing until the Vietnam War. And then they just used us as fodder in Vietnam War. They was like, hey, here you go.
World War II, you get into the Montford Point Marines. And the commandant of the Marine Corps was like, I want no black people in the Marines. We didn't have any black Marines before. That's crazy. But guess what? Served anyway. And they weren't in North Carolina outside of Camp Lejeune. Terrible conditions, terrible training, terrible living conditions. And they went and they fought through the Gilberts and the Marianas and the Pacific Islands, and they gave them hell, like we do.
And as a reference, Bax, they were finding people in the 80s. They were finding Japanese guys in the 80s.
Wow.
Pacific, holding their post. That's how tough the fighting was in the Pacific. The Japanese didn't surrender. They didn't. That's not what they did. They were finding guys in the 80s, walking out of caves in rags with their weapons well maintained, holding the post. And they had to get dignitaries to come over from Japan and relieve this guy. Like it was tough fighting in the Pacific. They fought to the death completely. Oh yeah. And about World War II, 7 Medal of Honors.
And like I said in the last Zoom, my grandfather didn't receive his award to 2006. He was dead. He was dead. But look, World War II, 1.2 million. These numbers keep going up, don't they? Treatment gets worse, numbers keep going up, right? 1.2 million black men served in the United States military during that war. But then they were treated as second-class citizens. But you get an example like, unfortunately, it has to be written down as Private Edward Carter, right? Initially. Because although he was a staff sergeant, he couldn't lead white soldiers. So to get into the unit to fight, he had to relinquish his rank that he had earned. So he does that, gets into the unit, and he fought forward in this German stronghold. People turned around, people went back, people were killed. He kept going, took it out, right? But guess what? In 1945, his commander didn't even want to recommend him. He's a white commander. He didn't even want to recommend him for the Medal of Honor because he was like, if I recommend him, he won't get nothing because they're not give it to him. So they gave him a Distinguished Service Cross strictly because of his race. He is now a Medal of Honor recipient, but he's dead. These are historical examples of patriotism and valor and rejection. And these numbers still go up. And guess what? I don't want to listen. Out of respect, I'm married to a black woman who's a veteran. The 688th Central Postal Directory Battalion was an all-black female unit overseas during World War II, and they kept that mail going. And anybody who's been to war understands. Anybody who's been deployed understands that mail from your family changes things. It's essential. That is not a secondary thing. That is not a thing to just be glanced over. That is necessary for the morale, and morale is necessary for victory. So the 688th, I mean the 6888, I keep saying 88th, is 3/8. The 6888 Central Postal Directory, all black, female postal service, and I would imagine that they were the ones assigned to make sure that the black soldiers got their email. Um, I would imagine that. So their contribution cannot be glossed over at all. And guess what? It was hard being a black man. It was hard being a black woman. Talking about we were talking about 1939 through 1945. You got to remember the Civil Rights Act went until 20 years after World War II ended.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, and I just had to look it up because whenever you said Edward Carter, I just had to make sure that I was thinking about the right Edward Carter. Bags, this guy was a warrior. In the military, you see some guys, Dion can confirm what I'm saying. You see some guys that are built for it. They're born into it. This dude was built for it. He went to Shanghai and fought. He went to Shanghai and fought against the invading Japanese. He got released because they found out he lied about his age. He was 15 years old.
Wow.
Then he left there and went to Spain and fought in the Spanish Civil War.
Wow.
He was an officer. He was a lieutenant. He's the first lieutenant. I mean, and this just adds to the story Dion told about him. He was an officer. He leaves, joins the United States military. He's a sergeant. They're like, you can't be you ain't gonna be no officer. We're just gonna tell you that right now. You can be a sergeant. Then they're like, you know what? If you want to be over here, you can't even be a sergeant. So they busted this dude down from an officer all the way down to the bottom of the barrel, and he did it. Like, come on, like, why would you do that? To fight for your country.
And they eventually discharged him because he had previously served over in Japan.
Yeah.
So they didn't allow him to continue his service, although he wanted to.
So this is the question that I have. I want to ask this question, and then I want to give you guys an opportunity to answer that, and then any last points that you want to make. This is a super important question. You've talked about the history of just terrible treatment, for lack of a better word. I mean, it's worse than terrible, right? Why do Black people continue to join the military and fight for this country that has treated them so poorly since the beginning?
One is we see a potential outlet to something better. A lot of times we have an understanding of the potential of the country, right? And then we see that we've chipped away a little bit here, a little bit there. And to be a service member kind of changes the general perception of you, because there are people out there who don't give a crap. We know that Black service members were accosted and lynched in uniform, especially after Vietnam and World War II. I'm sorry, not Vietnam, especially after World War I and World War II. But we see that there's a difference a little bit, right? Then also, to be honest with you, if you're poor, and I'm guaranteed you're gonna get paid, and I'm guaranteed you're gonna eat 3 times a day, That's in the lore. I know for our generation, signing bonuses. Good Lord. You come from 8 Mile in Wyoming, and I tell you I'm gonna give you $40,000 if you sign up for the military for 4 years, in addition to your pay that you're gonna make while you're there, in addition to healthcare, in addition to GI Bill afterwards, and so forth and so on. Yeah, I can get out of poverty. I can do something else, and then you might end up staying. You never know. But the underlying thing, especially for our forefathers, our grandfathers, and our great uncles, and all those guys, they had an idea, of vision, that if I serve, I probably will not live to see the change, but maybe my children and my grandchildren will. So the people who served in the Civil War had to imagine that maybe one day, not necessarily in those terms, but the Civil Rights Act of 1965 would get signed. But they knew they wouldn't see it, and so forth and so on. And we built this country along with everybody else, and we ain't going nowhere. Yeah, Abraham Lincoln, you can suggest that we colonize other places. No, we're not. We're here. Yeah, y'all can say go back. No, we're not. We're here.
i.e., i.e., Liberia.
Yes, we're here, and we are not going anywhere. And we're going to force you to look in the mirror. We're going to force you to see the hypocrisy. We're going to force you to face your heresy when it comes to your religion. We're going to force you to see all of that. And then we're going to continue to build and grow. And if you look into it at a deeper level, if you subtract us from the equation, America would not be as far along as it is as a national power, period.
I agree with everything Dion said. Uh, I'll look more at today. Um, I agree with, and I agree with everything he said about today. I just wanted to add a little bit onto it. I think that there are a few reasons. Uh, one of the primary reasons is people's economic situation. Because you have a lot of kids in disadvantaged situations where they're going to school. They lose weight during the summertime. You see what I'm saying? Like, you get breakfast and lunch at school. You got a lot of kids, and I mean, I got cousins like that. I grew up with people like that. You guys know them too. The best meals they ate were at school, and they've never seen $1,000 before. They've never seen that. I mean, if somebody's telling you, "Hey, look," and I'm not even talking about a $40,000 bonus. They're like, "Look, you get a $5,000 enlistment bonus. We'll give you $5,000. You get to eat 3 meals a day, and and you get to go to medical, and you got some place to sleep every night. The electricity works, and you got a bed." And Dion has seen those guys, because in boot camp they are happy. It's crazy. You will see some guys in boot camp when everybody's hating life. These dudes is happy. They walking around because they're living better than they ever lived. That's why a lot of people do it nowadays. I mean, and you can get something out of it. Like me, I looked at what my daddy had. I looked at his friends. I looked at the way he lived his life. And I was like, man, this ain't bad. I mean, I could do better, but it's not a bad place to start. And you just, and I will give credit where credit is due. We're nowhere near where we need to be at, but the system that me and Dion came up in is 1,000% better than my parents' generation, like in the military. 1,000% better. But we're still missing in certain places. Like, for instance, I was a fire controlman. We're electronics computer guys, and there there's maybe one black dude for every 25 white guys in the in my MLS. What I did, like there ain't no black people because they don't even the recruiter didn't even tell me about it. Dion, I made a 94 on my ASVAB. They didn't even tell me about it. They enlisted me undesignated. So Baxter, undesignated is when you don't have a job coming in. You go to boot camp, you ain't got no job. You go to boot camp and they tell you what you're gonna be after boot camp. That's how I enlisted. I went home, told my dad, and my dad was like, nah. He took me back down to the recruiter's office. The recruiter never told me about this. And I almost maxed out the entry exam.
Wow.
And he put me in on the bottom of the totem pole. My daddy had to go back in there. I'd have got that, I'd have got. I didn't even know. But and that's still part of the problem. But best decision I ever made. I mean, I got what I got now because of the military. I've been out for a while, but I learned a lot of good stuff, and I think that's part of it. The VA loan policy, excellent. And I think those of us that do go in and have somebody that have a mentor, those of us are in really, and that's getting a lot better too today because there are so many mentors now. A lot of times you get in, you don't have one before you leave, but as soon as you get in, if you show any amount of aptitude, you got a guy like Dion. He's gonna take you under. Come on, bro, come see. He's gonna take you under. He's gonna run the game to you. He's gonna tell you how it works, and he's gonna tell you everything because the military they don't tell you everything that you're entitled to. Like the VA program, that's a dark art that they talk about amongst themselves. They don't tell you how you can use that. And now there's an awakening, and we're starting to figure out that like the keys to generational wealth are real estate and insurance. Those are it. Those are the keys to being able to pass something on to your children. Nobody told us this before. Nobody said that. Now the military is a really good way to be able to build up on these little things. Like you get in, so to get a good insurance rate, you need to have good credit. To get good credit, you need to have good bill paying, but you also have to have a steady job with a steady paycheck. And you instantly get a little bump just for being in the military because they know that paycheck's coming. People are gonna give you money easy. And that's why I think a lot of kids today with the proper mentorship are getting in. I know that's why my son went in, which I wish he went to Marines, but whatever. But but I think that's a big reason why African Americans are going to the military nowadays. And I personally don't see anything wrong with it because there is a big push to where people are telling us not to go into the military. There are those of us telling us not to go into the military. And it's primarily former military members that are saying this. And I'm like, why don't you just tell them what you did wrong? Why don't you give them the roadmap? That's what you do. We have to break the system down from the inside. We can't break the system down from the outside. That it makes zero sense. We don't have the political power. We don't have the numbers to break the system down from the outside. You got to get inside to break the system down. So we need to get in the military. We need 4-star generals. We need all of this. But it's just it's a disconnect that's going on. But I said, wait, I started rambling.
Oh, no, you good. That officer thing is a key. General Lloyd may or may not have another job, but heck, he was already a 4-star.
Mm-hmm.
But real quick, the Korean War, 600,000 African Americans. It was a just 3-year war, 50 to 53. Now watch this. Vietnam, Robert McNamara project, 100,000 implemented in 1966, pulled hundreds of thousands of poor men into the war. 40% of those were African American.
That's when we were good enough for the front lines.
And we 11, 12, 13% of the population, whatever. 40%. So there's an old quote, right? So we can transition. A veteran is someone who at one point in their life wrote a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including their lives. To be a black person in the United States of America, in our historical and our contemporary context, to write that blank check to this country, who at present is still finding different ways to try to disenfranchise you. I mean, North Carolina just got took to task by the Supreme Court not too long ago, saying that your voting laws are targeting black people. This is 2020, and we're still writing that blank check. We're still serving this place. We're still going out there and doing our jobs, serving with distinction as patriots. So when I'm here and I tell you that a violation of this man's constitutional rights based on his skin color, I'm going to protest. I'm going to have something to say. I am going to display my displeasure with that. That's patriotic, period. And you, on the other end of that, trying to stifle my constitutional rights under the guise of being patriotic because you got three flags that don't match on the back of your pickup truck. It's not patriotic. It is not. Carrying these flags all of a sudden, by the way, all of a sudden, we won't get into that. But anyway, carrying all these flags and doing all this stuff does not make you a patriot. You cannot get further into the patriotism in the United States of America unless we expand and we talk about black women's service, because you're black and you're a woman, and then you're serving in that context to where you might be oppressed in your community, you might be oppressed in the community at large, and you might be oppressed in your service, and you still serve.
Yeah, and I have to segue on that flag thing. It is the epitome of cognitive dissonance that you call yourself a patriot, but you ride around with a traitor's flag. How much crazier does it get? You have a Confederate battle standard on your vehicle flying next to the American flag while you scream at a Mexican to speak English.
Wow.
Mind blown. You know what I mean? Like, it's a traitor's flag. It is. I mean, and before I go off too deep in the weeds, they didn't start flying that flag until after 1965. That flag is flown as a direct rebuke of the civil rights movement.
Mm.
That's why that flag is flown. They didn't fly it before then. Everybody thinks they did that old. No, they didn't fly it. They didn't start flying that till around the 60s as a middle finger to the federal government for making them integrate.
Wow.
And those are the patriots.
I want to wrap. There's a quote that I found from Deval Patrick. If love of country is about more than symbols and ceremony, Black America, and I would add Black veterans, Black soldiers, has a lot to teach about patriotism. I just want to say again, thank you guys for your service. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. And thank you to all of the soldiers, whatever branch you're in, and your service to this country in spite of a lot of, all the things that we talked about and much more that you guys are facing on a daily basis. So on behalf of Dion and Jeff, I'm Baxter. I just want to make sure that if this conversation was something that you appreciated, please share it. I think these types of this type of insight is invaluable, and it needs to be share it. If it's something that you like, let people know. Comment, share, subscribe to the channel, and please just help us advance these talks. Um, until next time we meet, I just want to say thanks again, guys, and thank you all for watching.